Question. Hi Kim. As I was watching the movie Apollo 13 starring Tom Hanks, a question came up in my mind, but I'm not sure about the answer. In that movie, an entire team of highly skilled, smart and dedicated team of NASA professionals are working tirelessly to come up with the best instructions that will enable the astronauts to come home. Is there a similar team of highly skilled, smart and dedicated team of benign beings of light who are assigned to each spiritual person to help them walk their path and fulfill their divine plans? Or is it just a figment of my imagination? I wouldn't really know, as I got used to having my prayers falling on deaf ears, as if nobody up there would be listening. Well, good question. The answer is, of course, yes, for a spiritual person. What I have explained in my video about how the world was created is that we have been brought up with a very inaccurate view of how the world was actually created, because we think that the world we live in, it was either created by God in one momentous event, or at least in 7 days, or it was created by this impersonal process of evolution. And both are inaccurate. As I explained in how the world was created, the world has been created in stages, and there are previous stages or previous spheres that came before ours. And the significance of this is our sphere was created by the beings who had ascended in previous spheres. They created our sphere out of their own beings, their own consciousness. And they were the ones who designed it. Then they created us out of their own beings and consciousness. So this means that we are not separate beings. The ascended masters who created us, they don't see that we are separate from them or they are separate from us. They see that we are out of their own beings. We are extensions of their own beings. So naturally, they are committed to helping us grow, because, as I also explained, the purpose of the world of form is that we grow in awareness. We start with a point-like sense of self and we gradually expand it. I also explained that we live on Earth on an unnatural planet where things are not working the way they did originally. Humankind has gone to a lower state of consciousness, lower state of the collective consciousness, which has had many profound impacts on the planet. And that is why, because of the lowering of the collective consciousness, that it's possible for us to believe that we're separate beings. And we can either believe that there is nothing beyond the material world, or there's only God and some angels up there, and maybe they answer prayers and maybe they don't. So what you need to recognize here is that on Earth, there are two ways to learn, as I've said many times. There's the school of higher awareness, and there's the school of hard knocks. And the vast majority of people on Earth have descended into what I call the duality consciousness, the illusion that they're separate beings. And when you see yourself as a separate being, you enroll yourself in the school of hard knocks. So the only way you really learn something is by experiencing physical consequences that contradict the image, the worldview you have in your mind. So everybody has certain expectations, a certain worldview in their minds. But in duality, that worldview is based on this illusion that you are a separate being. And so the only way you can learn is that the world doesn't conform to your expectations. The world constantly disappoints you, constantly doesn't live up to the image you're projecting out, and therefore you eventually get to a point where you open yourself to a higher understanding. But this can, for many people, take lifetimes of the hard knocks. So what I'm trying to say with all of this is that when people are in the school of hard knocks, they are not open to learning from this team in the ascended realm. And therefore, the ascended masters are really just monitoring these people to see, is there a change? Does the person come to a point where they're willing to learn? And what is that point? I mean, it's really the point where you recognize that you are the one who has to change. Your mind is the one that has to change. Because you recognize that you have an image in your mind and the world doesn't live up to it. And instead of trying to get the world to change, as most people are doing, you finally say, oh, is it me that has to change? So I adapt to how the world really works instead of how I think it works, instead of how I think it should work. And when people make that switch, then immediately there's a team of ascended masters assigned to them. And that team can involve beings in the identity realm, the mental realm, and the higher emotional realm that are working with the ascended masters. So yes, there is a team. But here's what you have to recognize, and this ties into the second part of the question. Is it just a figment of my imagination? I wouldn't really know, as I got used to having my prayers falling on deaf ears, as if nobody up there would be listening. And see, this is the shift that you make, not at the beginning of the spiritual path, but where you go a little higher on the spiritual path. And there are many people who haven't made the shift, and many people who have been studying spiritual teachings and practicing spiritual techniques for decades who haven't made the shift. Because you're still thinking, mind you, you're still thinking that the ascended masters or God are like the Old Testament God, the wish-fulfilling God. If you pray to God, if you do rituals, if you make sacrifices, if you please God, He is going to give you what you want. But that's not how the ascended masters work. Because, as I explained in my video about how the world was created, we are designed to be co-creators with the ascended masters. They are not going to answer your prayers for you, because it would only reinforce the image that you are a separate being and there's a separate God up there and you can't do anything on your own, so you have to rely on some miracle or the answer to your prayers. What the ascended masters will do is to help you come to the point where you realize that the key to changing your situation here on earth, the key to change both your outer situation and your life experience, is to change what you are projecting out with both your conscious and subconscious minds. It's what I talk about in many of my videos, these subconscious selves that we have, that we are projecting through what we think the world should be like. And if you have the image that you are a separate being living down here on earth, but there is this God up there, and if you pray to Him, He's going to grant you a miracle and things are going to work out the way you want. If you have that image, you're projecting that image. That image is working directly against your awakening to realize that you are a co-creator. It's working against you taking control over your own state of mind. And the ascended masters, of course, will not do something that hinders your growth. The false teachers will, and most religions are based on these false teachings. So they will reinforce that image. But when you come to a little higher level, begin to mature on the spiritual path, you need to look at this illusion, that the remote God, the wish-fulfilling God, and realize that everything is a reflection of your state of mind. And that the only way to really change your life is to change your state of mind. So, for example, I don't pray to the ascended masters to help me win the lottery. But I, on a regular basis, pray to them to help me see something in my psychology that I haven't seen. And so, so that's why, you know, I know you can go out there and you can find people who say, oh, I prayed to Jesus and my wish came true. Yes, lots of that. But that is, these are people who are in the school of hard knocks. They are not on the spiritual path. When you go on the spiritual path and you start going higher on the spiritual path and maturing on the path, you need to simply look at this expectation of the wish-fulfilling God. And you need to dismiss it. You need to let go of it. You need to realize that if there was such a God, and if that God answered your prayers, it would actually work against your awakening to who you really are as a co-creator. So what I'm saying is that you can have people who are in the school of hard knocks, right? They only learn from physical consequences of their actions. Then you can have a group of people who are beginning to open themselves to the spiritual side of life. I met many people on the spiritual path who are in this category. They are open to spiritual teachings. They might even be open to ascended masters, but they still haven't taken full responsibility for themselves. That's why they still have this wish-fulfilling God, the idea that prayers should be answered. Right? Now you think about it. Where did the idea that prayers should be answered come from? Well, it can only come from separation, because if you realize who you are as a co-creator, you're not asking for, you're not doing prayers to get certain things. You are willing to change your mind to co-create what you want. And so this whole idea is just false, and there comes a point where you have to throw it away, because you can't take responsibility for yourself and your state of mind if you are thinking that there's this miracle granting God up there that you can please somehow. So if you recognize your prayers are falling on deaf ears, it's actually a good sign, but you just need to step back and ask yourself why that is. Okay? So what I'm saying is, those in the school of hard knocks, the ascended masters are just monitoring them to see if they start to wake up. Those who have started to wake up, yes, there's a team that are working with them. But it's really only when you make this shift of totally taking, or at least beginning to take your responsibility for changing your state of mind, that the ascended masters can really work with you. And so that's when they really start working with you more intensely. And the idea is, of course, that the ascended masters are given outer teachings and tools to help you clear out your psychology. But the goal is, of course, that you come to a point where you have established a personal inner contact with the ascended masters, so you can receive personal directions from them. But these are not prayers. They're not granting wishes. They're helping you see what you need to resolve it in your psychology to take the next step up on your path. So yes, there very much is a team. If you're not consciously aware of that team, it could partly be because you have this view that they are up there to grant your prayers and wishes. And if you can let go of that self, overcome that conglomerate of selves really, you will start having more contact with the ascended masters and with your higher self, your higher presence.